Harding. Welcome to my blog.stampwithelaine.com and welcome to this Fun Fridays project. Stampin Blends is the hot topic for November, and I'm using crumb cake, old olive, cherry cobbler, pumpkin pie, the lighter of the pumpkin pies, and a colour lifter. We're going to be making this card, and that comes from the Merry Cafe set, which is photopolymer. We're also going to be stamping this linear image of apples, and that comes from Bike Ride, which is this image here. We're going to need the coffee cup framelit dies, which was bundled with Coffee Cafe, and the dies we'll be using are this larger cup, the hand, I don't know what that's called, the hand grip, and the lid, Memento black ink, and Cajun Craze. My card base is crumb cake, 8 1/4 inches by 5 7/8 inches. That's 21 centimeters by 14.9 centimeters. With the long side on top, you score at 4 1/8 inches. That's 10.5 centimeters. Piece of Cajun Craze that goes across there, and that measures 2 inches by 5 7/8 inches. In centimeters, that would be 5 centimeters by 14.9 centimeters. I'm using the Painted Autumn DSP, and it's this pattern that I'm using. This has been cut at 1 3/4 inches by 5 7/8 inches. You need scraps of crumb cake to die cut this, very vanilla cardstock to stamp your cup, and to cut out the lid. Yes, that originally started out as a piece of very vanilla cardstock, and it's very vanilla because the background for this painted harvest is actually in very vanilla and not whisper white. Metallic enamel shapes, blocks A, B, G and D. Big shot and magnetic platform if you have one, but you can also die cut with the ordinary platform that is supplied with a big shot. To start with, we'll stamp the cup with Memento black ink, and you have to use Tuxedo black Memento ink because it's specially designed for working with alcohol markers. With any other black ink, even archival ink, it will bleed. So I also want to stamp some leaves, which I will have to fussy cut, and I'll need 3 of those. Put a post-it note on either side of the coffee mug because I want to stamp my apple. Ink up my apples. Now if you look at some of the photopolymer stamps, you know, the tabs there, it's too thick, so when you pick up ink on from your ink pad, it might get onto the end of that tab image. It will smudge onto your cardstock, so we want to avoid doing that. So in order to do that, I'm just very carefully only inking up where the end of the line image is, so I don't get any on that tab. And you need the tab there because that is a guideline for your dies, which way your die will go. Next I'm going to stamp the linear image of the leaves, this one and also this one here. And lastly, this little sprig here. So now I'm going to colour my apples in. I'm using the lighter of the cherry cobbler pens, and I'm going to use the bullet end because there's a thick end and a thin end. The thicker line will indicate that there's the brush end, and the thinner line is the bullet tip. The lids are quite difficult to get open, but there's a reason for that. It's a tight fit so that the alcohol from it doesn't evaporate. Now I'm going to just colour the outline, and I'm just going to leave a tiny gap where it's not coloured at all, so that will look as though I've highlighted it. The lid will nest into the other lid that you've got on the opposite end of the pen. Now I'm just going to put a little bit of dark shading there. So now I'm going to blend it in, and I'm colouring over it, going in little circles round the dark ink and then covering it up again. I'll use the lighter green, Old Olive, for the leaves on the apples, and it's no point doing any shading on the leaves because it's so tiny. Just colour the leaves in. Just where the stem is, I'm just going to put a bit of a darker shading there. Go over it with the lighter pen again. Colour lifter to just push back some ink where I've gone over the mark. Now I'm using the lighter shade of the crumb cake, and I'm going to colour in the whole of the cup. I'm going to fast forward this. It's best to work in small areas because the ink will only blend while the ink is still wet, and you need to replace the cap every time you use it so that it prevents the ink from evaporating. Then you go over it again with your lighter pen. I'm using the brush end this time, and I'm working in little circles. I'm using the brush end to cover larger areas. Bring in the magnetic platform, your base cutting plate, and then your cardstock for die cutting. Now I forgot to mention that you do need to protect your work surface, grid paper or a silicone mat underneath, because it will bleed through. So now I need to cut my cup, a lid. The leaves I fussy cut. Snip off a bit of crumb cake cardstock so we can cut the hand grip at the same time. You can run it all through the big shot at once. So there are my die cut pieces. I cut those out with the die, but these ones I had to fussy cut, and it's really easy to do. Just angle your scissors at a 45-degree angle and move your paper and notch your scissors. I've zoomed in again so you can see me colour the lid. Again, I'm using crumb cake, and I'm going to use the bullet end just to draw a line across the cup. Use the pen to draw around the edges. Rather than sponging, I'm just using the side of my marker pen to give the edge of the lid a bit more definition. And I'm going to do a bit of shading, so I'm just going to make that a little bit darker on one side. into the lighter crumb cake colour, and working in a circular motion, I'm just going right across the lid, and the same with the bottom. I forgot to press the record button, but with a photopolymer stamp you can see exactly where you're stamping, so it's best to cut the corrugated hand wrap so that you can position it correctly. Pop dimensionals on the back. Pop dimensionals halfway through. Oops, I ought to have a silicone mat for that. A double stack. Fast fuse on the back of the DSP. Stick it down to the Cajun craze. Fast fuse on the Cajun craze. Pop that onto your crumb cake card base. Trim off the excess. Stamp the apple cider first, followed by a cup off, so that you can get the spacing right in Cajun craze. So I'm going to start there. A cup off next to it. I've taken off all the backing strip from the dimensionals. All I have to do is position that over my card. Attach a glue dot to my leaf. Then use a mini dimensional for one of the leaves so I can pop that up. Last of all, I can pop metallic enamel shape onto the card. So there you have it. I hope you've enjoyed today's tutorial. If you like it, do give me a thumbs up. Subscribe or share on Facebook, and my grateful thanks if you do. If you're watching from YouTube, you'll find the list of supplies I use below this video in the Show More section, with direct links to my online store. They'll also be listed on my blog here at blog.stampwithelaine.com. You can find me on Facebook, Pinterest or Instagram. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back soon. Bye!